Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil, now in podcast format. I'm Tom Reaoch and your host for the show. I'm talking from the city of Campinas in the state of Sâo Paulo, Brazil, so when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Today's guest is Steve Scheibe. Steve is a Brazil expert. He's also president of All Abroad Consulting of San Diego, California, and that's where he joins us today. Steve and I initially connected on LinkedIn, and he's a member of my Talk to Brazil LinkedIn group where he frequently posts from his blog. We were also together, and Steve was on our show in April, where we had a chance to meet here in Brazil and talk about business. So with that, Steve, I want to say hello again and welcome back to Talk to Brazil.
Tom, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back with you, even if it is at a distance.
Well, most of what we do and what most business people do is at a distance, right? We become more virtual business persons and we become personal business persons, right?
I agree, but I also like I like to see people, touch people, and see the smile on their faces.
Well, I'm smiling because talking to you is always a treat, so you can bet on that, all right? But what I'd like to touch on today, and as I mentioned recently, you posted on your blog and also on the Talk to Brazil LinkedIn group, the title was Bolsonaro, the Good and the Bad. What I'd like to talk about in the beginning is the good as it still relates to business opportunities in Brazil. So what's your take today? I know you've written this about 3-4 weeks ago, and things Brazil is very fluid. So what's your take today?
Well, Tom, I think there are very important things happening in Brazil, and some of the things that are good are not covered consistently and do not come to the surface except in the specialized press, perhaps, and perhaps only with business interests that are involved with particular situations. But as I mentioned before and in the blog, one of the areas is quite important and which seems to be making significant inroads and improvements is the whole infrastructure stuff in Brazil. There are lots of airport and port terminal concessions taking place. There are privatizations taking place of different companies. The recent news that Petrobras is likely to be privatized in 2022. It probably will not happen by that year, but just the whole movement away from the status mentality in Brazil, I think, is significant. And how quickly and how fast that happens is an open question. But I think that for you and I, who have been in Brazil for longer than we probably should say, it's kind of a relief to see the opportunities for free enterprise, but at the same time recognizing that there are tremendous inequalities in Brazil, and the state has an important role in attenuating those inequalities.
No, I agree with you on the infrastructure part, and that is happening. So there have been some real grassroots changes. Privatization of a major rail line running north to south and highways, what have you. So these things are happening, and again, they make the local news, and they do impact business, and they do impact the forward thinking. That is important.
Yeah, I think that the direction of the economic team headed by Paulo Guedes is generally well accepted, not only by investors and not only by business people, but by a substantial proportion of the Brazilian population who feel that that it's time to change things, and that right now inflation continues to be low, interest rates are going down. The big problem in Brazil currently, in my opinion, is not so much the economic direction, which I think is generally correct, but the political situation, which mines or undermines the confidence. And without confidence, no matter how low your interest rates are, people are going to be reluctant to invest.
No, that's true, and I agree. But even in that light, even today I put up on my LinkedIn group, you see companies like Nestle's are going to invest over $250 million in projects. So there are projects, there are companies, and most generally are the companies who have been here, who understand these fluctuations, understand, as you said, the undercurrents in Brazil. They've been here long enough to accept it. They're still investing. They're still growing. They see what the opportunities are.
That's right. And just yesterday in the San Francisco Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, there was a large meeting of Brazilian investors, international investors, and people in the tech business, and those people are very interested and continue to invest in fintechs and financial technology, in the health sector and the education sectors, which are all areas which will continue to grow and create tremendous and offer tremendous opportunities for business people.
Well, the fintech, I was mentioning that today actually to my wife. We were watching a program relating to Venezuela and the high inflation. And we're from the time here in Brazil where really you had a stack of bills to go out and buy, a bag of beans. And but that was the time, and this was years ago, where let's say the fintech technology, the banking system in Brazil became highly automated. And there was, massive changes in the technology. So when you look today to the world, you see other countries, even the States, playing catch up in the banking system. So I think there is that type of technology. The health, as you mentioned, too, education. So these are all areas that are going to be able to keep growing here.
Yeah, and they're all areas that are underserved and really need to grow. So that's the important thing. Absolutely.
What we were talking about was the money flowing now to the consumption here in Brazil. One of the things that you mentioned as the good was the approval of the 13th month payment for the Bolsa Família. And that issue does transfer income, and should transfer income into the hands of the people. And the understanding is that they'll go out and spend it or pay off debt. So that is part of the good.
That's important, as well as the release of the retirement funds in the FGTS and the PIS. Those two programs have something like I think it's 25 billion reais sitting in the Caixa Econômica Federal, in the federal one of the federal banks, and that money is from retirement funds, and the government's created a program to release that and try to stimulate the economy. And the concern is that I hope we're not, trying to spend the day at the expense of tomorrow. But at the same time, the economy does need some sort of stimulus, and we're seeing, hopefully, it's not a dead cat bounce, but hopefully a bottoming out and a slow, gradual, and hopefully it will be a continual recovery from now on. I mean, the economy has to run in cycles, or should run in cycles, and there's no good reason that it shouldn't run in cycles, except for people shooting themselves in the foot and creating their own crises. But I think the economy should rebound. And I see, we've talked before in the past about my clients, and my clients are getting up in the morning and going to work and exporting and seeking new markets and going to trade shows and doing business, perhaps not as usual, but a little more aggressively because things are not that great in Brazil, so they have to be more aggressive in foreign markets.
No, but I think that's the important point, is you just can't sit back and wait for something to happen. You have to go out and make it happen. Early today, I was on my BBN Brazil podcast talking exactly about that with Leonardo, who we were together with in April.
Right, yeah.
Many of the, and he mentioned, the Brazilian business persons were waiting to see what the government's going to do. And I said, well, we've heard that story before, but really from a business perspective, is what you just said. You have to go out and do it yourself. If you're always waiting for the government to do something, you're going to be sitting around for years waiting. So you just have to go out and do it. And as you mentioned for your clients, that's what they're doing.
And, there are different regions and different business cultures in Brazil. And Sâo Paulo and the interior of Campinas, the interior of Sâo Paulo, Campinas region, are regions where there's a long-standing entrepreneurial vision amongst many people, and they're aware of it. You can't sit back and wait all the time. Sometimes you do need the government. Sometimes you do rely on government approvals, government financing, whatnot. But for a lot of companies, the government is your a partner that you carry on your back, and you're aware of him. But in spite of the weight on your back, you have to keep moving forward. You have to go out and get the business, because otherwise, you're not going to survive. You're not going to be in business next year or the following.
Well, you mentioned going to trade shows. In business, I say always comes from people. It's people that you're going to meet somewhere, opportunities that you're going to see somewhere that's going to generate business. And it just doesn't come to you. You have to go after it.
Well, and actually, there's another event taking place in Brazil. I think it's next week, actually, which is the Select USA event, bringing investors from the United States to Brazil from different states. I think Georgia, South Carolina, I think Iowa, and maybe Texas are present on this one. So people are, they're actually people that are still, in spite of whatever news, bad news, good news, indifferent news, or no news, people are still looking for, people are still looking at Brazil. It's a big country. It's just, it's a big place, too big to ignore.
Right.
And sometimes too big to understand and too big to get your arms around, but still, it can't be ignored.
Well, like you said, just bite off a small piece and go take a look at it. And the same thing is true for Brazilians. I say go to the States and see what's happening in other parts of the United States. There's business there to be had.
Yeah, I just had a client from Itu who was here, and we were at a trade show, and he has a very innovative, small, functional medical type product, and generated a lot of interest at the trade show. And so there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're confident that something's going to gel, and he's going to be able to do business here with that. Having said that, he's got to jump through the hoops here and do stuff just as people have to do in Brazil.
Right. Now, from where you sit, what do you hear about Brazil?
Tom, it's I hate to dwell on things that can be interpreted negatively, but right now the big news is the Amazon fires and so much more burning is taking place this year compared to last year. But if you compare it to 2016, which was the PT administration still. The fires are, bigger, but not that much bigger than they were in 2016. Now, having said that, there's no good justification for random burning and cut and slash technology anymore. Agriculture doesn't need that. The wood industry doesn't need that. The cattle industry doesn't really need that. But it's just, it's taking place in spite of that. Yeah. and it's not good. It's not, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and I think that you're right in that it's taken away the headlines. It's become the headline right now. These last 2 weeks has been talking about the fires and what's happening and the back and forth from Bolsonaro and others of regarding the Amazon and the Amazon is ours and it's not yours, and so that type of thing really generates energy that could be placed in other places more positively, I think.
Yeah, it's curious. The headline in the newspapers in Brazil today is that Trump wants to help with the Amazon. And that seems to me counterproductive because, the military, the Brazilian army and the armed forces in Brazil have always been so jealous and protective of the Amazon region and nationalistic about that even if Bolsonaro is the Trump of the tropics, the armed forces, they say, hey, we don't need Trump sticking his nose in our business. And it's not only Trump, it's anybody. It's Macron, it's whoever.
Right.
So
right.
There's a situation that's being created, which is essentially counterproductive for everybody. And again, that's one of the things where I say, unless we have political confidence and predictability within the political system, it saps the energy and the positive things that could be happening and taking place and need to take place in the economy.
Well, looking forward, and you did mention in your blog just so many positive things. As you look out, we've talked about this before. What do you feel today, looking forward to 2020? Are you more positive? Are you?
Well,
is your anxiety level any different?
Well, the positive things that we're going to have elections again in 2020 at the city level, at the mayor for mayors and city councilmen. Mm-hmm. And in some way, just the ritual of elections is positive, and I believe that gradually with each election we make somewhat of an improvement. I think that the shifts that we have, the radical shift that we've had from Lula to Dilma to the sort of the end cap or bookcase end cap of Temer, mm-hmm. and then to Bolsonaro, the swing from left to right will gradually, I hope, balance itself out, and we'll get back to somewhere more consensus-based type of politics, and hopefully that will happen not only in Brazil, but hopefully we'll get away from this polarization in the rest of the world as well, because it just does not seem to be productive. And I think that in the long run, most people want to deal with things want to deal with people because they feel that they can trust them and that there's a basic sort of goodwill and honesty right. that can take place, and trust, and that's really essential for business, especially in the long term. I mean, I personally don't want to do business with anybody that I don't trust or don't feel comfortable with.
Right, right.
And I think that's the way we all should do business.
Brazil or anywhere, right? That's in your backyard.
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And so the whole thing, if you can do business in a trustworthy fashion, have people believe in you and you believe in people, I think that's really the important sort of thing. I mean, I'm writing proposals every week for different companies. Some of the proposals are approved, some of them are not. Mm-hmm. But the whole thing is that you want to deal with people that you feel that they trust you and you trust
right.
them.
Right. Well, that's the positive side. If your phone is ringing, that's a key indicator. So there is interest. There are people that want information, that want to know, that are interested and really interested in doing business.
Yeah, and this sort of thing that I think both you and I are in a situation where we work basically on a referral type basis, mm-hmm. and the referrals come because people have had a good experience with you in the past, and they right. feel that they know you well enough that they're comfortable with recommending you to somebody else.
Right.
And so that's how you come and establish business. And it's not only me, it's everybody.
Yeah, that's why they listen to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a basic function of trying to convey that positive things can happen and that there are good people out there to do business with. And that business takes place on a day-to-day basis anyhow.
Right.
And you got to do business. I mean, we're making the world go round.
And that comes from, drinking coffee with somebody or giving somebody lemons or whatever. But it's like you said, looking in the eye, seeing their smiles, seeing what satisfies them, understanding your client from E2, what device he has and how to help him get it into the U.S., what have you. So there's a lot happening.
Yeah. No, and you see that. I mean, you see the area around Campinas and how much activity there is and how much wealth, and all of this is taking place under the surface on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Nobody's writing articles about this, and nobody's going out and boosting it, but it's taking place nevertheless. And there are lots of things that are the good things that are good and normal things that are happening. Right. People are going out, they're going to the supermarket, and they're buying food. You have a birthday party, you have a churrasco, you have whatever.
Right.
And things are happening.
No, and there are companies building factories or expanding and bringing new lines in. And we've mentioned this. You saw that when you were here, even the Chinese, the Asians.
Yeah.
There's a lot of investment here. There's a lot happening here.
And not only, we have to look at new, different alternatives. I mean, a lot of there are businesses that need to be revived, or some businesses that are no longer going to survive because they're not producing what we need in the contemporary world. And for example, in Brazil, there's a tremendous amount of opportunities in alternative energy.
Right.
And alternative energy is a wonderful opportunity in Brazil. Brazil already has a highly non-polluting renewable energy source with hydropower, and Brazil is developing very quickly in the wind power area.
That's true.
Those are and solar power is coming.
Solar panels.
Not
that's
quickly,
right. That's
exactly.
happening. There's actually a deficit of the panels here. A factory here near Campinas, they've been sold out for a long while. There's so many major projects, and so it's happening.
So there are lots of positives, and it's just that most people don't know exactly where or how or exactly how to look for the positives. So it's an important thing that in a conversation, that the type of conversation that we can have is that maybe we get a little bit away without being a Pollyanna and being overly optimistic or trying to, as Brazilians say, cover the sun with a screen, with
a sieve,
with a sieve. That we have to be realistic and be aware. But at the same time, there's no need for me to be directly involved in most of the time with any sort of corruption, nefarious activity, bad politics, whatever. I mean, and that tends to be the image that people see.
Right.
And you have to say, no, look, you can do business in Brazil without having to pay somebody off or do this or do that or do anything that you really don't need to do.
Right.
Just don't get sucked into that.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with you. Just talk to the right people and find the persons you can trust, and that's it. So it's what I've always said. It's relationship and it's trust. So know the people. And you've been here long enough too, and you really understand that, and that's how the country works. Well, Steve, we're coming to the end of our time again. But as I mentioned off air when we were talking, I do want to have you back on because I think what we need to have is this quarterly review. To update what's happening. No, because there's just so many things. There are so many opportunities here, and as you mentioned in your blog, there's a long list of things. And I think what we want to do, and I think our listeners want to do, and your clients as well, really want you to be sharing this with us. So I'll count on you to be back again.
Well, Tom, I enjoy talking to you immensely, and always have a good time. And I look forward to any future invitation that you might have.
Well, it's always open. You don't have to wait for me to call. If you have something good to say, just give me a call.
Okay. All right. Well, and if we have nothing good to say, we can at least drink caipirinhas and go out.
I have lemons here. I don't really need your lemons, but if you want to bring them, you'll be fine. Okay.
No, I don't want to bring lemons because I might get in trouble with the Brazilian Agricultural Authority, just as they do here in California. You can't bring any food into the state because we've got to protect our agriculture
That's
here.
So, okay. Well, Steve, enjoy your Friday, enjoy your family, and we'll be talking to you again, okay?
Great. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay. And for our audience, I'd like to mention that you can also find more about Steve on his LinkedIn profile, which you will find on the Talk to Brazil, which is talktobrazil.com site. Okay. So visit that site. You can also find our previous shows on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Himalaya, TuneIn, and many others. And thank you, our audience, and remind everyone that today's program was brought to us by FocusMI Market Intelligence. And FocusMI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. And more about them on their site, which is FocusMI.com. So remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.